So it's always hard to say it's good morning or good afternoon. So it's a couple minutes past 1, but we still feel very connected with the breakfast. So please let me say good morning. So we have the 4 panelists from different countries, from 2 countries abroad and 2 from Poland. 2 panelists are really from abroad and 2 panelists are really Poles. So we have different perspectives also as the, some reasons are concerned. And I would like to introduce Professor Jonathan Hedle from Leicester Poland Center for Biotechnology from the Jagiellonian University. I represent the Jagiellonian University as well as Professor Małgorzata Kosowska, so we feel some strong community here. Professor Hedle is a leader of the Hedle Laboratory at the Jagiellonian University, focused on bio-nanoscience and biochemistry. And he writes on the webpage that the overall goal is to understand, harness, manipulate, and eventually build complex bio-nano machines or bio-nano robots. So it is strongly connected with the previous panel, I could say. The lab has other interests, including aging and age-related diseases, and we or they ultimately see this merging with the bio-nanoscience work, whereby an understanding of age-related disease processes and mastery of bio-nanoscience leads to effective treatment using smart therapeutics. So he is an author of the many publications, including this from Nature. Last year it was? This year. This year. Professor Daniel Mege from Space Center of the Polish Academy of Sciences. He is originally from France, from University of Nantes, and he relocated eventually from France to Poland, so the first place of his work is just in Poland. And he's a specialist in tectonics, field geology, geological mapping, geological processes, structural geology, plate tectonics, and spatial analysis, exploration geophysics, planetology. And the leader of the project, Mars, another planet to approach geosciences issues, for example. So many topics about planets and especially Mars. Many publications in very valuable journals with Polish collaborators. And now we have the Polish side, and please let me start with the lady, Dr. Małgorzata Pilot from Museum and Institute of Zoology, Polish Academy of Sciences. She is a researcher focused especially on the population genetics, evolutionary biology, conservation genetics, and ongoing research projects, population genetics of European wolves. I'm right? Well, great. Social structure, gene flow, and genetic differentiation between sympatric ecotypes of the killer whale from North Pacific as well. So it seems to me that wolves are well internationalized, and we are talking about wolves from different countries speaking different wool languages. Okay, and she is, of course, the author of many publications in very prestigious journals, still about wolves. And then Dr. Tomasz Wojdacz, who represents the Pomeranian University of Medicine from Szczecin. He is the NAWA benefactor, I could say. So he is the researcher of the Independent Clinical epigenetics laboratory at the Pomeranian Medical University in Szczecin. And the lab was established in January 2019, founded by a grant from the National Agency for Academic Exchange. So it is what we do, truly speaking. And their research primarily focuses on epigenetic mechanisms of disease development, especially cancer, and also involves development and application of the epigenetic biomarkers in early disease detection and personalized medicine. I have to say the truth about myself. I'm a philosopher, so you can imagine how tough it is for me. So he's an author of the many publications, including those published in the International Journal Cancer and many others. So we have 4 topics. So 1 hour, 4 topics. First, it is about the equipment, facilities, and something what we may say is the basis for good science or top-level science. So the question is whether Poland is really ready for doing this because of the equipment. And the second topic is about collaborators, how about Polish colleagues, Polish fellows, Polish scientists. So is good collaboration or not? This is the question for, especially from people from abroad. And next is the question about prestige. So it is always the question about how the Polish academia is evaluated and what is the rank of Polish academia abroad. So it is not easy, I can imagine, to come to Poland, to be a part of our community, whereas to be in Oxford or to be in Harvard means much more for people. And then the last dimension is the question about the focus point is the question about Polish social and cultural dimension of life. So it is not easy to come to our country and to recognize all these, very unique, I would say, mechanism of social life. Professor Kosowska is a specialist in this field. So I would like to ask our panelists about short self-introduction for a couple of minutes, and next we'll proceed from one point to another. Please, Jonathan, it's your first.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. So yes, my name is Jonathan Heddle. I'm originally from the UK, which is where I did my degree. I have a background in pharmacy and biochemistry. And then I moved to Japan for quite a number of years. I was working at the Riken Institute. And then I moved to Poland, and my full-time position at NAWA Polskie Center of Biotechnology began 1st of January 2016. And as was mentioned, we do bio-nanoscience research. And yeah, I mean, I come from a position of being a pretty big fan of Polish science, because we have achieved, as was mentioned, we got some really nice results. We published in Nature, so things seem to be going pretty well for us so far. Thank you.
Yep. Actually, I came here in Poland in 2010, and it was following a phone call which I had in 2009. It was a phone call from someone from the Police Academy of Science. So first, I was wondering what kind of police, what wrong did I do? And quite fast, I understood that it was a Polish Academy of Science, which made sense. And so they wanted me to be a kind of advisor for a big project for planetary geology, which means the geology of Mars, of the Moon, Venus, these type of things. And I would even not need to go to Poland, just be a kind of advisor and collect money, and that's all. So the project failed. But still, I found it quite interesting, because this kind of topic, planetary geology, was not at all developed in Poland at the time. There was only one PhD student who ended her work in this field. And so the idea of doing something new in Poland, developing a new field, was really interesting for me. And so I asked what to do for this, and someone told me, so ask FNP. So I asked FNP, and then they founded my research in Poland, and then I stayed. And I stayed in Wrocław, which is the first place which I saw in Poland, which I found extremely interesting as a city. And that's all. And then I'm here since that time.
Hello, so my name is Małgorzata Pilot. I work with mammalian evolutionary genomics. I completed my PhD studies at the Museum and Institute of Zoology of the Polish Academy of Sciences. Afterwards, after completing my PhD, I went to the UK, to the University of Durham, for a postdoctoral fellowship. And initially I planned to stay there only for 1 year, but I ended up spending 12 years in the UK. So after completing my postdoctoral fellowship, I've been awarded Marii Skłodowska-Curie Research Fellowship, which allowed me to carry out an independent research project also at Durham University. And afterwards I secured a position as an independent group leader at the University of Lincoln, also in the UK. And finally, after spending 12 years in the UK, I decided that it's time to come back to Poland. But it turned out to be quite complicated because I came to the UK with one suitcase, but I had to move back the entire lab to Poland. So here the funding from the Polish Returns program of NAWA really provided me great help with organizing removal and re-establishing myself in Poland. So a few months ago I returned to the institution where I completed my PhD, the Museum and Institute of Zoology of the Polish Academy of Sciences. And now I'm leading there an independent group. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Tomasz Wojdacz. I'm with this job now in Poland. It's my first job in Poland. I left at the third year of my education at Silesian University of Silesia in Katowice. I was one of the Erasmus students that left, did my master degree in University of Aarhus in Denmark. That's the second biggest city in Aarhus that some people have heard of. Then I went, just before graduation, I went to Australia for a few weeks to learn something, and I got my first job at Peter McCann Cancer Institute in Australia. I was supposed to stay there for a long time, but 3 months into the post, I got the notification. I got a PhD fellowship, individual fellowship back in Aarhus University. I took that, got my degree, worked in Aarhus for a year in Lundbeck Foundation, funded my postdoc, then moved to Karolinska Institute to do research for 3.5 years. Went to England, to Southampton, worked there for 6 weeks, and got a Maria Skłodowska-Curie Fellowship that took me back to Denmark to Aarhus Institute of Advanced Studies for 3 years. And from there I came to Poland, and my road here my transition to Poland was pretty easy because I worked with the researchers from Pomeranian University for a number of years before I came back. So it was easy for me because of the collaboration that we've established, and I knew in that institution to a certain extent, and was welcome there. So that's pretty much it.
Thank you very much. So the first topic, as I introduced it previously, is about the infrastructure. So we may agree, and it is beyond any doubts, that without the top equipment in laboratories, we can do good science. So especially for Tomasz, the question is for Tomasz and Jonathan, about how Polish universities, Polish academia looks from this point of view, or the point of view of the equipment and facilities for doing top-level science in Poland.
Yeah, so I mean, I can only speak to my experience at MCB, of course, but generally the equipment is as good as any other place that I've been, including UK and Japan. I think the challenges are accessing equipment. It's surprising how many pieces of equipment you can find on, let's say, university databases, but not actually find. They're in a locked room, for example. So and this is maybe the challenge, not actually the equipment itself, but access to equipment is important. So, and this speaks to whether we should develop more centralized services, for example, at universities, and equipment, especially expensive equipment, big piece of equipment. The idea that equipment belongs to a single laboratory is this is out of date. This is the past. Equipment belongs to institutes and should be shared. So I think, equipment, there's a lot of nice equipment. Accessing it's important. The other big challenge, which is not just in Poland actually, it's everywhere, is when you have big pieces of equipment, it's really important to have expert, full-time, dedicated staff to run it. Otherwise, you just lack efficiency. And you can, in the worst case scenarios, you can have equipment standing unused because nobody knows how to use it. This is always a problem everywhere in the world, but it would be, and it's true here as well, I think. But I mean, we have everything we need. We've done a lot of nice work, all based in Poland. I was involved, a little bit involved in the successful bid to get a cryo-electron microscope in Solaris, this national synchrotron at Jagiellonian University. This will be a national facility, but it's the best it's the top level in the world, and I'm sure it's just being commissioned now, but it will result in a lot of excellent publications and a lot of visibility for Polish science, especially in structural biology. So it can be done.
In my line of work, I don't need equipment in Szczecin to do my work. That's what it is. We in personalized medicine, we generate the gigabytes of data for each patient, and that can be done in specialized facilities. Effective way, that's my personal opinion, effective way of doing that kind of research is to have specialized facilities, which I have found in Poland, but there are many of them around Europe, and they're open for collaboration. What medical school provides me with is access to patients. Setup for clinical trials is important for me. And that's the most important thing. Nobody buys this fancy next generation sequencers. In my opinion, nobody in each institution should be buying that. Because by the time you train your staff, the new version of that equipment is going to be in place, and you're going to keep on training your staff. You have to have a throughput for that, and that infrastructure is already there. So it was never a question for me of infrastructure, because that I can find somewhere in Poland or somewhere in Europe. It was more a case of a setup of Pomeranian Medical University with the Faculty of Medical Biotechnology. The name is a little bit different, but in this transition between MD's world and the PhD's world, that link in one setup was the most important for me to continue my work for future and see potentially that in the future.
Thank you.
So in my work, I use the next generation sequencing technologies. These technologies developed in an extremely fast rate, and it's pretty much pointless, in my opinion, for individual research institution to acquire this equipment and just having to change it every 2 or 3 years. When I was working in the UK, I typically was sending all my sequencing libraries to Korea, and it wasn't because there was no equipment in the UK, but simply because Korea offered the better deal, the better price. It seems that I'm going to do the same now, although I think it would be great to have a central genomics facility in Poland, not in a single research institution, but like a central facility serving all the institutions, so that we don't have to send it abroad, but instead we can get the competitive prices in Poland. But in terms of the equipment in my research institution, we have enough equipment and more. And so there is absolutely no difference in the quality of research equipment we have here as compared with what I saw in the British institution. But with the large sequencing equipment, I think the best strategy would be to have a central facility.
Thank you.
For us in space science, it's a little bit different because the instruments which we need cost several billions of zloty, and they are just space probes. So it's something which is done at the European level, and so it doesn't depend on Poland at this level, but of course Poland contributes anyway to this type of equipment. But more than this, so when you have a space probe, you have scientific instruments, and here Poland is quite strong in some of these things. Of course, we are not building every type of instrument, but there are some specific fields of specializations where Poland is extremely strong, for instance, for microgravity devices. For instance, you know that the Rosetta probe, which was exploring comet Gerasimenko, had a penetrator which was done in Warsaw. Currently, the Mars mission InSight has also a penetrator built by Astronica in Warsaw. And so our equipment, just when we need them, we build them. So we don't need to purchase anything. And for instance, several years ago, when I met first people in CBK, so as a geologist, I had a small group in Wrocław, and we met engineers from CBK, and the idea was for us to explain what we are interested in doing, and for them to explain us what they are able to do. And so quite fast, after a day of workshop, we found that there are some type of robots that we need in geology to understand things on Mars and the Moon and other planets, which cannot be, some type of information which cannot be obtained by conventional robots which are exploring planets. And so the engineers we had in front of them said, okay, no problem. We had the head of the mechatronics lab at that time told me that he had for some time an idea for this type of things. He was not sure it could be useful or not, but it was an idea which he had. And so it's a kind of robot which allows to explore any type of terrains on any planet, which is exactly what we needed. So we discussed a bit, submitted one project, and so it was founded by ESA, European Space Agency, and it's currently ongoing, so it works very well, and it takes advantage of the specialization of Poland in microgravity devices. And so I said it was funded by European Space Agency, but so it's nice, but I'm quite confident that if we would not have had this money from ESA, it would be quite easy to submit a nice project to FNP, for instance, or to NCN, or to NCB, or maybe to all of them, and to get funds for this type of things. So we don't, as I said, the equipment that we need, we are designing them ourselves. And I think what is the important thing here is that it's not a problem, in my opinion, in Poland to find money to build this type of equipment, because FNP, NCN, NCB, these agencies can probably, I'm confident, found this type of things if there's no other sources of international funding. So it's just really a nice place to be here in Poland for this type of things. It's extremely fun, I must say, also, to be able to think like this.
Thank you very much. So now we know that Poland is well equipped for doing science, so it's very nice to hear it. And the next topic is about people. So there is no science without people. And of course, in Poland we have people too. So it is surprising for maybe someone. But the question is how you find Polish collaborators, how you find, this Polish community of scientists when you come to Poland. I see your track, and when you come back to Poland, when Polish guys are concerned. So how you see the Polish collaborators in the scientific or on the scientific way to doing the top level science? Małgorzata, maybe you first now.
So I think it may be a little bit more difficult to judge it from my perspective, because I came back to the same research institution where I did my PhD, and most of the staff remained the same during all these years. So they are the same colleagues that I had before, and of course I maintained the collaboration with many of them throughout the years. So nothing really changed for me. So probably I'm not the best person to judge it from a point of view of an outsider, because I really am not an outsider.
Okay, Tomasz, so...
I think the same way as in any other country. There's, in my opinion, absolutely no difference. You go out there, you network. I got most of my jobs through network, or I found out about the fellowship from a fellow that was having, in the case of the Curie individual fellowships in Denmark. And it's you have to be out there, and you have to attract people and present something. Internet is there, you know what people are doing. Identify a person and present something that you want to do that person would be interested in and would be beneficial for both sides. And I don't see much difference. Been here for 10 months, was started from my main field was hematology and breast cancer. I work with people in rare diseases now, in Pomeranian University, branch out. I'm a kind of a technology person, so I provide the technology for the projects, for the clinicians mainly. And in that regard, it's just getting bigger and bigger with the time. And it was before I kept my collaboration with Denmark. I still work with sometimes with people from Australia. So it's I'm keeping the same network of people and expanding it to others. And that's what science is all about. But I don't in particular see any sharp differences between Polish. Maybe a little bit, people are not that confident in Poland at the first meet. It's kind of that there is a little bit of misunderstanding. What do I want in that kind, because I tend to approach people for that collaboration, but that disappears very fast. So that's. Excuse me?
So no difference.
Absolutely not.
Jonathan, what do you think?
I partly agree. I mean, I think it's scientific community has a lot of similarities everywhere in the world, and I've found that people here have been very approachable and generally open to collaboration if you have a good idea. I spent a long time in Japan, and of course I love Japan, but I would say Poland has some advantages in terms of approachability of people for collaboration. So in my experience, Japan was rather more hierarchical. So if you were, and often, although not always, had very large laboratories which were nations unto themselves. So it was quite difficult if you were a smaller laboratory, for example, to convince such a laboratory to deign to collaborate with you. That's not been my experience in Poland. So my experience has been pretty positive. Pretty much whenever I approach somebody, they will usually be positive about collaborating. And it's really similar to what I find elsewhere in Europe, including the UK. Of course, it doesn't always work out. People are we're all very busy, but that's also the same everywhere. So yeah, I think I don't really have any negative experiences so far.
Thank you.
So in space science, in planetary science, there are not many collaborators in Poland because we are actually one of the two groups, one in Wrocław, one in Krakow, which is doing this type of thing. So we had a meeting in September between all potential collaborators. We were 20 in the rooms, and including technicians. So it's quite small, but then when you are adding students, it adds, of course, it can add a lot. And I've been always amazed by how much students are interested in Martian robots. It is absolutely amazing. There are several groups in various universities which are participating to international competitions to build students' robots for Mars exploration. And Poland is extremely strong in this. And I have absolutely no idea why, but they are extremely motivated in this type of things. So this is more in terms of engineering, in terms of planetary geology, which is my field. There are also many young people who are motivated, and some of them are excellent. But what I think is the problem, what I identify as a problem, is very simple, is just the low level of salaries. Because, of course, most excellent students will go to other fields and for sure not go to find the composition of this or that type of rocks on the moon or whatever. So I think this is just attracting the best PhD candidates is really a challenge. We may find some of them which are excellent, and some of them are absolutely amazing, really. But compared to the whole mass of students, they are finally not that much. And I really think after hearing many PhD candidates in 8 years, that it's a problem not only to have a good stipend for PhD, but therefore they are aware than having a salary of a researcher during their whole lifetime in Poland, it will be very difficult. And this is really the big problem which I have found.
Thank you very much. So all of you have the perspective of different universities, different academias around the world, and you perfectly know that the prestige is the crucial point for this world. So as someone said previously, we are not well paid, so the complementary stuff is to be in the prestigious place. And the question is, how Poland is recognized from your perspective, how Polish academia is evaluated and recognized as the quite prestigious place for doing science, and then to be the part of world scientist community. So maybe, Jonathan, you first.
I think it's, well, I can say it's getting better. I think that's which is a common story about our activities in Poland. I mean, everything is on an upward trend. I do find that some people from, let's say, Western Europe or the States have a somewhat outdated concept of Poland, which is rather, unfair, because it doesn't really reflect reality of the situation now. But then, the best way to, if you're talking about academic science, the best way for us to increase our prestige is it's down to us. I mean, we're the researchers, and in the end it comes down to publications and where you report your work and the quality of the work that you report. And as we, get better at this, then our prestige will go up, and we cannot artificially manufacture prestige. I mean, that's what it will come down to. And this is a long process. I mean, I think the funding bodies are doing well. They're supporting ambitious science. From my own institute, I can see even in the 3 or 4 years I've been there, it's heavily internationalized now with some excellent scientists from all over the world. And so, the prestige will grow. The only other thing is a lot of places do look still at these university rankings, such as Times Higher Education and stuff, and a lot of their scores is not based not solely on research output. So there are other things the universities could be doing in terms of internationalization, for example. But we're on an upward trend, but we still have some way to go, and it's partly our responsibility to ensure that we produce excellent work, because that, in the end, that's what will actually drive us up these league tables.
Thank you. Małgorzata.
I have quite a large network of international collaborators, and from their perspective it doesn't seem to matter much where exactly I'm placed. So with this respect, it didn't really change. But I noticed a difference in terms of applications for postdoctoral positions. So when I was working in the UK for a postdoctoral position, I would typically get more than 40 applicants, and many of them so good then it was difficult to choose which one to select. While here, when I advertised postdoctoral position, I got less than 10 applicants per place, and the best of them were Polish, which is great on one side that we have great researchers in Poland who apply for these positions, but on the other hand, the quality of international candidates wasn't so high, which may mean that for researchers looking for postdoctoral positions, Poland is still not that attractive, possibly because, yes, quite outdated view of Poland that still persists in some countries. So obviously we have to work on it, and we have to improve the prestige of the Polish science by making sure that we produce high quality science. I think that's the only way we can achieve it.
Thank you. Tomasz.
There are two things. I have to agree with Małgorzata on that point about the postdocs. I was recruiting at the beginning of the year, and it is an issue. You get better people to apply for the jobs. Just to mention, my PhD student in Denmark had a Nature publication before she got a fellowship with me and started to work. And she worked for free for almost a year because she was so determined to get a project. And that's not quite the case here in Poland. I had a little bit of an issue of recruiting. that needs to change, and there needs to be a promotion because opportunities are big. And then if it goes about the prestige, I'm not sure if I'm the best person to ask about the prestige. I do work, and I used to work at the prestigious institutions. However, I always grab the opportunity. Prestige is not quite a factor for me to make a decision. It's an opportunity. So in terms of opportunities, that is something that Poland has to offer. Now, I think they are huge. I've had some, because a lot of my research is commercial. It's driven by the translational research to clinics, which includes the entrepreneurship and the commercialization activities. And I've spoken to people here in Poland who wanted to do who wanted to go to the industry. They've changed their mind after they've spoken to me. They did not themselves in Poland see the perspectives for the future and the opportunities that I already saw. So the communication here, both outside of the Poland, to change the perception of the Poland, and also there's quite a lot of work to do here in Poland to see people that, well, the bar has to be a little bit higher and you can do it. It's there. It's for you to do it and not waiting for somebody to do it for you. People have got to be a little bit more proactive and grab the opportunities which are there. I'm confident. I'm here because of the opportunities that Szczecin, that I see in Szczecin, and the longer I'm here, the more I see, more opportunities I see.
Thank you very much. Daniel, what is your opinion about that?
My opinion is that I could see, I was recruiting 3 times in Poland, postdocs and PhD students, and I could really see an evolution in the candidates. There are, of course, always candidates who are applying from almost unknown countries with skills which are absolutely not adapted because they are trying to get to another place. But once you are removing all this, I could find that the general quality of candidates has increased a lot. And for the last recruitment of postdocs and PhD, which I did last year, it was really extremely difficult to select these ones. Because for each position, I had at least 2 excellent candidates, which I really would like to have. So the solution which I could find finally is to hire some of them and collaborate and recommend the others to other labs so that we can continue to collaborate this way. So yes, it's quite, I could really see a significant improvement. But now there are 2 things. There is a prestige which can be related to a lab, to a country, to a group, to a field. But there is also the fact that in Eastern Europe there is some European money which is accessible and not accessible in other countries. Or if you are in Western Europe, you want to make a nice European project, you need to have some of these countries with you, something like Greece, Poland, and blah blah blah. So I'm not sure always if this is a prestige of the country or the lab, or if there is a need to add someone from this country to have a chance of project funded. I think that it's a mix of both, and I'm not sure it's really an issue, but just we should not think too much that this is always prestige. Also, there is an interest, a financial interest on the other side to have people like us.
So it's worth it to say that, you know, at the Jagiellonian we have 4 doctoral schools, and now we have more than 20 international PhD students recruited in September. And what is very interesting that more than 20 is from the doctoral school of natural science and trig sciences. So it is not the, you know, accident that mostly PhD candidates are interested on these topics or this area of sciences, whereas in humanities and social sciences we have only 3 PhD students from abroad. And another information from our ULAM program in NAWA, so we had, please correct me if I'm wrong, more than 315 applicants in the program from different countries, and then we selected 70 people, yeah? 60-something people just working in Poland or starting work in Poland. So we will see the growing interest in Poland as the place for doing science, I'm sure, and also for PhD candidates. So the prestige in these two dimensions are different, of course. So for PhD student, the diploma is very important. For scientists, good work in laboratory is very important. So good publications are very important, and then the transfer from one university to another is much easier, of course. And the last point, the life is life, and people have to spend some time outside laboratory. And the question is, how do you see the Poland as the place for good life, simply speaking? Because without good life, it is hard to say that we'll have good results in science. Maybe Daniel first.
Okay. First, a few seconds on what you just said. I think NAWA is a very original organization, and that many countries would be extremely happy to have a kind of NAWA. And it's the same for FNP, which when I'm telling my colleagues abroad how it works and now how NAWA works, they are just amazed. They would really like to have something like this in their own countries. So now going back to your last question about, I didn't find any special social issue. For instance, what I know is that when I arrived in Wrocław, I put my luggage. I was arriving from what? Probably from a flight. And I put my luggage on the floor of a lab, and I found that it's a place where I would like to continue. And so it was simple like this. It was a nice place. There were nice people. The city is nice. Wrocław is an extremely nice place. You can go everywhere in Europe for very cheap. Very multicultural, European. Just there is no issue. It was extremely easy. I always felt European before any other thing, and it's really a European country. So I've always felt extremely well at that place.
Thank you very much, Jonathan.
Yeah. So I live in Krakow. So that's a very nice city, old town. I came from Japan. So my first pleasant surprise, because in Japan a very popular food is dumplings called gyoza, and then I discovered we had dumplings here in Poland too, which almost look the same. So that was a good start point. Krakow is very nice. I only have two problems with Krakow. One is that some days in the winter the air is not the greatest, and the other problem I have is that it attracts very large numbers of tourists from my home country who are often not the most well-behaved representatives of my country. Usually, if I'm in Krakow center late at night, I can almost be certain that the loudest shouting, most badly behaved people are British, which I can only offer my humblest apologies for. But yes, I mean, I had my first daughter was born here 2 years ago, and my next one will be born in a few weeks, so I'm putting down roots here. So, and it's a very nice place to raise a family. I mean, Poland supports families pretty well as well. So, yeah, it's good.
Thank you. So Tomasz and Małgorzata, so you are Poles, so it will sound kind of disappointment to ask you about how you live in Poland, but the question is how do you argue for coming to Poland for your colleagues from different countries, scientists from different countries, and to show that Poland is really a very nice place for life, simply speaking.
I lived in quite a few places, so there are good things and there are bad things about living somewhere. Poland is not of difference from all of those other places. We are driven by, our work is a significant part of our life. So we grab the opportunity, we chase it, and we chase it, and then we grab it, and then we in my opinion, the life is kind of on the second stage, the country itself, and Europe is 3 hours on the plane long, so you can be anywhere within hours. We work internationally, so we speak at work in English. We communicate with people all over the world, and Poland is just one of those places in the global world. With the special things, and that's what makes special Europe, what I like about Europe, is that you go to another country, you see the different culture, and that is exactly the essence of Europe for me, that there are those different places, we can go to those different places, and they're equally good. I wouldn't say that ones are better, the others are worse. They are different and worth seeing, and Poland is definitely one of those places which I've learned. I've spent too much time in Scandinavia, and I am in a lot of social norms very Scandinavian, and then I see the difference between my Polish part of those norms and the Scandinavian way of looking at the things. But that's interesting, as it was before to come to Scandinavia was to come to Australia. So definitely worth exploring. It's a huge country. From the mountains, if you like mountains, you can work in Krakow. If you like the sea, you go to Szczecin, and you can commute in between if you like anything in between.
Thank you very much.
So I contributed to internalization in one more way. I brought to Poland my husband, who is also a researcher, and he's Portuguese. So it took me a few years to convince him to come to Poland, and there were a few advertising points that worked. First, he really liked the food. Second, he learned snowboarding, and now it's much more convenient to live in Poland than in Portugal, for example, for that. And third, it turns out that the Baltic Sea in the summer is warmer than the Atlantic in Portugal, so he also liked that. So yeah, overall, he seems to be very happy in Poland as for now.
Thank you very much. We have very good timing. So thank you all panelists for sharing your experience, for being with us, for coming from different places in Poland. So it is not only Warsaw, I have to say. We have Krakow, Warsaw, and Szczecin, and Wrocław. So thank you very much indeed. And the panel I'm just announced to close. Thank you very much.